The sun beat down mercilessly on Riverside Memorial Gardens, turning the gathered crowd into a sea of black fabric and glistening foreheads. 200 people stood in rigid formation around the mahogany casket, their faces appropriately somber, their designer sunglasses hiding whatever emotions, or lack thereof, lay beneath. Victoria Ashworth's funeral was the social event of the season, though no one would admit it in those terms. The billionaire tech mogul, dead at 42 from a sudden heart attack, left behind an empire, 3 ex-husbands, and enough scandals to fuel society pages for years. Her son, Marcus Ashworth, stood at the head of the casket in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression carved from stone. At 30, he'd inherited everything: the company, the fortune, the burden of his mother's legacy. He cleared his throat to begin the eulogy. Victoria Ashworth was a force of nature. She's not dead. The words shattered the funeral's reverent silence like a brick through stained glass. Every head turned toward the voice. A man in Navy work coveralls stood at the edge of the gathering, yellow cleaning gloves still on his hands. He was in his 50s, weathered and gray-haired, with the kind of invisible face people looked through rather than at. The funeral director moved quickly to intercept him. "Sir, you need to leave. This is a private ceremony." "She's not dead!" the janitor shouted louder, pushing past the funeral director with surprising strength. "You're about to bury a living woman!" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushing with anger. "Security! Remove this man immediately! This is—" "I work at Ashworth Tower." The janitor's voice cracked with desperation. "I cleaned the executive floor. I was there the night she collapsed. She's not dead. She's been poisoned." The word hung in the air like smoke. Marcus's face went white. "That's absurd. My mother had a heart attack. The medical examiner confirmed what someone paid him to confirm." The janitor was at the casket now, and before anyone could stop him, he'd pushed back the lid. Several women screamed, men shouted. But the janitor pressed his fingers to Victoria's neck, ignoring the chaos, his face intense with concentration. "There," he breathed. "There. Feel it. Her pulse. It's slow, almost nothing, but it's there." Marcus shoved people aside to reach the casket. "You're insane. She's been dead for 3 days. She's been embalmed." "She hasn't," the janitor said, looking up at Marcus with fierce certainty. "Look at her. Really look. No discoloration, no signs of decay. Because she's not dead. She's in a coma so deep it mimics death. Tetrodotoxin, from pufferfish. In the right dose, it slows the heart and breathing to almost nothing. In Haiti, they call it zombie poison." "This is ridiculous," Marcus began, but Dr. Harrison Webb, Victoria's personal physician, had pushed through the crowd. His face was ashen. "Let me see," Webb said, his voice shaking. He bent over the casket, fingers finding Victoria's neck. Seconds stretched into eternity. "My God," Webb whispered. "There's a pulse. Faint. But call an ambulance now." The funeral erupted into chaos. Mercy General Hospital's ICU was locked down within the hour. Victoria Ashworth lay in room 407, hooked to machines that beeped and hummed, confirming what should have been impossible. She was alive. The janitor sat in the hallway, still in his coveralls. Yellow gloves folded neatly beside him. Police officers stood nearby, unsure if he was a hero or a suspect. Marcus paced the corridor like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at lawyers. Detective Sarah Chen approached the janitor, her notepad open. "Mr. Santos, I need you to explain how you knew." Miguel Santos looked up at her with tired eyes. "I didn't know. Not at first, but I suspected." "Start from the beginning." Miguel took a deep breath. 3 nights ago, I was cleaning the executive floor. It was late, past midnight. Everyone should have been gone. But I heard voices from Ms. Ashworth's office, arguing. "Who was arguing?" "Ms. Ashworth and her son, Marcus. I shouldn't have listened, but—" Miguel's hands trembled. "She was telling him she'd found discrepancies in the company accounts, millions missing. She said she'd traced it back to him, to offshore accounts he'd been using to embezzle funds." Marcus stopped pacing. That's a lie. He's making this up to— Shut up, Mr. Ashworth, Detective Chen said calmly. Continue, Mr. Santos. Marcus was angry. Said she'd always controlled everything, never trusted him, never gave him real power. She said that's because he'd never earned it, that he was entitled and reckless, and she'd been covering for him for years. Miguel's voice dropped. Then she said she was going to the board, going to have him removed from the company entirely. And then? Then Marcus said she'd regret it, that she didn't know what he was capable of. I heard him leave, and I went back to my cart. I didn't want them to know I'd heard. The next morning, Ms. Ashworth collapsed in a meeting. Heart attack, they said. But you didn't believe it. Ms. Ashworth was healthy, ran marathons, had a personal trainer, a nutritionist, and she was only 42. Miguel shook his head. It didn't make sense. So I started reading, research, about poisons that could mimic death, and I found tetrodotoxin. That's quite a leap, Mr. Santos. My daughter is in medical school, Miguel said quietly. She tells me about her studies. I remembered her mentioning this poison, how it was used in cases of apparent death, how it could slow the body's functions to almost nothing. And I thought, what if? Detective Chen studied him. So you crashed a funeral based on a hunch? Based on the certainty that burying someone alive would be murder, Miguel corrected. Even if I was wrong, wasn't it worth checking? In room 407, Dr. Webb stood over Victoria's bed, reviewing test results with a toxicologist. Tetrodotoxin in her system, enough to induce a death-like state but not enough to actually kill. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. How long until she wakes up? Detective Chen asked from the doorway. Impossible to say. Hours, maybe days. The effects can vary dramatically. Webb looked shaken. If she'd been buried, the oxygen deprivation alone would have caused permanent brain damage, or death. Someone wanted her declared dead but didn't want to actually kill her? Or wanted her to die slowly, buried alive, in a way that would never be discovered, the toxicologist said grimly. Once she was in the ground, any eventual autopsy would show she suffocated. A terrible accident. Perhaps the embalmer's mistake in declaring death. The tetrodotoxin would have metabolized by then. Perfect crime. Detective Chen turned to find Marcus standing behind her, his lawyer at his side. My client maintains his innocence, the lawyer began. This is circumstantial at best. We have a warrant for your phone records, Mr. Ashworth, Chen interrupted. And your financial records, and we're interviewing everyone at Ashworth Tower about the missing funds your mother supposedly discovered. Marcus's composure cracked. She was going to destroy everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for. That you'd stolen, you mean, Chen said. She never gave me a chance, never trusted me. Everything was always about her vision, her company, her legacy. Marcus's voice rose. I made that company profitable. I doubled the stock price, but it was never enough for Victoria Ashworth. So you poisoned her. Marcus stopped, his lawyer grabbing his arm. But the damage was done. His face said everything. Marcus Ashworth, you're under arrest for attempted murder. 5 days later, Miguel Santos stood beside Victoria Ashworth's hospital bed. She'd woken up 2 days ago, confused and weak, but very much alive. The machines had been removed, replaced by flowers and cards from employees, friends, and strangers who'd heard the story. Mr. Santos, Victoria said, her voice still raspy, they tell me you saved my life. Miguel shook his head. I couldn't let it happen. Couldn't let him get away with it. You could have been wrong. You could have looked like a fool. Better a fool than complicit in murder. Victoria studied him with sharp eyes that were regaining their famous intensity. You're the janitor on the executive floor. I've seen you cleaning, late at night, always thorough, always invisible. That's the job, Miguel said simply. What's your salary? The question surprised him. $22 an hour. Victoria was silent for a long moment. My son stole $12 million from the company over 3 years. He embezzled, manipulated accounts, and when I discovered it, he tried to kill me in a way that would have destroyed my reputation and covered his crimes. She paused. Meanwhile, you, a man I never truly saw despite walking past you 100 times, risked your job, your dignity, and possibly your safety to save me. That's quite a contrast. Miss Ashworth, when I'm discharged, I'm restructuring Ashworth Industries. New leadership, new priorities, and I'm creating a new position. Director of Corporate Ethics and Integrity. Someone to watch for the kind of corruption my son perpetrated. Someone who understands what it means to do the right thing even when it's hard. She met his eyes. I'd like you to consider the position, Mr. Santos. Salary of $180,000, full benefits, and the authority to investigate anyone in the company, including me. Miguel's mouth opened, closed. I'm a janitor. I don't have a degree. I'm not... You're honest. You're observant. And you're brave. Those can't be taught. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. Besides, my daughter-in-law, ex-daughter-in-law, is a corporate lawyer. She's agreed to help you get any necessary certifications. And your daughter in medical school, I'm paying her tuition. All of it. It's the least I can do. Miguel felt tears burning his eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll stop letting people overlook you. Victoria's voice was firm. You saved my life, Mr. Santos. Now let me help you change yours. 6 months later, Miguel Santos sat in an office on the executive floor of Ashworth Tower, not cleaning it, but working in it. His title plate read, Director of Ethics and Integrity, and his first major investigation had uncovered 3 more executives involved in the embezzlement scheme. His daughter, Maria, would graduate medical school debt-free next year. Marcus Ashworth was awaiting trial, facing 20 years for attempted murder. And Victoria Ashworth had learned to actually see the people who made her empire run. Not just the executives in corner offices, but the janitors, the assistants, the security guards who kept the wheels turning. Mr. Santos? Victoria appeared in his doorway. Board meeting in 10 minutes. I want you there. Me? Why? Because you're the only person in this company I trust to tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. She smiled. That's more valuable than any MBA. As Miguel gathered his notes, he thought about that day at the funeral, the moment he'd shouted those words that changed everything. People had called him crazy, dramatic, attention-seeking. But he'd been right. Sometimes the most invisible people see the clearest. Sometimes a janitor knows more than the CEO. And sometimes saving a life means risking everything on a truth no one else wants to believe. Miguel had done that. And in return, he'd discovered that being seen, truly seen, was worth more than remaining safely invisible. Even if it meant crashing a billionaire's funeral and declaring the impossible, she's not dead.